You probably think you know exactly how economic miracles happen, right?
Oh, I mean, everyone does. It's totally baked into our brains.
Right. The recipe is obvious. You build these massive, sprawling factories. You aggressively cut taxes.
Yeah, you drop your import tariffs to zero.
Exactly. You let the physical goods just flow across your borders. And then, boom, instant wealth.
The nation just magically rises from poverty.
It's basically the standard Econ 101 narrative. It's what every policymaker preaches.
Right. It's printed as absolute gospel in the textbooks.
But what if that entire story is just a lie?
And I mean, not just a slight miscalculation, like a fundamental, mind-blowing misunderstanding of reality.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are taking you inside a massive, completely unprecedented economic investigation.
Yeah, we're tearing into a towering stack of research.
We're talking about a landmark study, one that tracked 4,000 individual factories over 13 volatile years.
13 years of hardcore data.
Right. And we are examining one of the greatest manufacturing booms in modern human history, post-1991 India.
But here is the ultimate trap for you. We are not going to look at the factory floors.
No. We are hunting a ghost.
I want you, the listener, to visualize something right now. Imagine a stark white backdrop, completely blank.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now, on the left side of this space, there is a traditional bustling factory.
Like smokestacks, assembly lines, thousands of workers clocking in.
Exactly. It looks perfect. It looks like pure progress.
Right.
But hovering directly above that factory is something sinister. It's a massive, invisible red noose.
Wait, a noose?
Yes, a noose. This deep dive is about what happens when an entire nation's manufacturing base is secretly being choked to death.
Just completely strangled.
Right. Not by aggressive foreign competitors, not by lazy workers.
And not by outdated machinery either.
No. They were being suffocated by the very services they desperately relied on to survive.
The scale of this misconception is just staggering. I mean, I need you to throw out literally everything you learned about how nations get rich.
Yeah, just burn the textbook. We are about to dismantle it piece by piece.
Let's start with the core fact, the absolute bedrock of the illusion.
Okay, the year is 1991. India faces a catastrophic balance of payments crisis.
They're essentially forced to open their economy. They have to start reforming.
And immediately after that, something incredible happens. The charts just go parabolic.
India's manufacturing output violently spikes. It shoots up by 5.7% every single year.
I mean, a 5.7% compound annual growth rate in manufacturing is a tidal wave.
It's insane.
Over a decade, that completely transforms a society. Millions of people are lifted out of poverty. The whole world takes notice.
And mainstream history immediately slapped a really convenient label on this explosion.
Right. They credited this massive wealth creation to one primary, highly visible policy change.
Cutting import tariffs.
Exactly. It makes so much sense on the surface.
The narrative was just beautifully simple. India finally dropped the high protectionist walls at their borders.
Right. They let cheap, high-quality foreign parts flow into the country.
The theory is that Indian factories finally got access to world-class steel.
They got cheap imported electronics. They got better screws.
And because the parts were cheaper and better, the factories suddenly became world-class.
Right. But here is the face slap moment.
Brace yourselves.
The mainstream narrative is dead wrong.
Completely backward.
When researchers ran the actual data, and we're talking about rigorous, unforgiving mathematical models here, they found something terrifying.
The tariff cuts. They explain almost none of this massive efficiency growth.
Literally none of it. The primary hero of the story did absolutely nothing.
It's a statistical zero, a rounding error, in the grand scheme of their productivity explosion.
Yeah, a flat line.
Wait, I have to stop you. I'm putting myself in the shoes of a business owner right now.
Okay, do it.
This defies basic common sense. Look, if I run a factory making refrigerators and my government suddenly makes the imported compressors 50% cheaper,
Right, your costs go down.
my factory should instantly become more profitable. I should be able to make things faster and cheaper. Are you telling me the basic laws of supply and demand are broken?
No, the laws are fine. The economists were just staring at the wrong variable entirely.
So tariffs are just a massive distraction.
A total political sleight of hand.
Explain that. Why didn't cheaper parts create the miracle?
Because, look, a cheap part is utterly useless if you cannot orchestrate its assembly.
Right.
The bottleneck choking these Indian factories was never the physical machinery on the floor. It was never the cost of foreign steel.
If it wasn't the metal, what was it?
It was an external, formless giant. The real saviors of India's manufacturing boom were not the manufacturers at all.
They had absolutely nothing to do with building things.
And one thing, the true engine of the 1990s miracle was four completely ignored background actors.
The plumbers and electricians of the economy.
Exactly. Finance, telecom, transport, and insurance.
The services. The unseen, boring infrastructure.
Right. Let's shift that mental visual we built a minute ago.
Okay, back to the White Room.
Look at that pristine factory in your mind, the one with the invisible red noose above it. Now, visualize four massive, pulsing arteries physically plugged directly into the concrete walls of that building.
Okay, that's intense.
Those arteries are the upstream services. And what is so deeply infuriating about reading the historical consensus is realizing how utterly blind everyone was.
Decades of obsessive focus on the bricks and mortar. Zero attention paid to the pipes feeding the building.
Human nature is incredibly visual. We just worship what we can see.
You see a gleaming new car rolling off an assembly line. You can touch it. You can photograph it.
Right. But you do not see the complex, invisible commercial bank loan that actually bought the robotic arm.
You don't see the frantic split-second phone call that rerouted a delayed shipment of parts.
But if that phone call drops, the car never exists.
It's crazy. Let's look at the reality of that invisible noose. Let's look at just how bad the suffocation truly was before 1991.
The era of the suffocating monopoly.
Yeah. The telecom sector, before the reforms, is the perfect, horrifying example of this nightmare.
It was a total state monopoly. Absolute control.
I was reading through the source documents, and I found a quote that actually made my jaw drop.
Oh, the 1980s official.
Yes. This is from a government communications minister in the 1980s. He stood up, on the record, in public, and said, quote, "Telephones are a luxury and not a right."
It is just a statement of absolute contempt.
It shows a complete misunderstanding of what a communications network actually is.
Right. A phone is not a luxury yacht. It is the basic, fundamental nervous system of a modern economy.
And his philosophy was not just empty rhetoric, it was weaponized into actual policy.
Imagine you are a hungry, brilliant entrepreneur in the 1980s.
Okay, you scrape together the money, you want to open a factory, you want to hire 500 people.
You secure the land, you build the physical walls, and then you ask the government telecom monopoly for a basic standard landline.
Just a normal phone on a desk. How long do you wait?
The historical average was 8 years.
8 years.
Just to get a dial tone.
I mean, that is an entire business cycle. Competitors rise and fall. Technologies become completely obsolete.
Your children grow up.
And you are still waiting for a guy in a truck to run a copper wire to your desk.
It's absurd. But the horror story doesn't even end there.
How could it get worse?
Let's assume you survived the wait. You bribed the right people. You waited the decade.
Okay, I finally have a physical plastic phone sitting on my desk.
Right. What happened when you actually picked up the receiver?
The national data from the era says your line broke down on average 19 times a month.
19 catastrophic communication failures every single month.
More than every other working day, you are completely severed from the outside world.
Put yourself in the shoes of that factory manager. Try to imagine running a hyper-competitive, modern global supply chain.
But you are forced to physically send a telegram or hire a kid on a bicycle every single time your assembly line runs out of a specific screw.
Because your government-provided phone is completely dead. Again.
It's not just quote-unquote bad customer service. It's not a minor inconvenience.
It is pure economic strangulation. It is the red noose pulling tight around the neck of domestic industry.
This is where we deliver the cruel, undeniable blow to the tariff theory.
Yes, this is where the researchers brought in the heavy artillery and just let the data do the talking.
The researchers basically constructed a statistical cage match.
2 policies enter. 1 policy leaves.
They took the vast mountain of data for the import tariff drops. You know, the policy everyone worships.
Right. Then they took the data for the upstream service reforms, the unclogging of the phones, the banks, and the ports.
And they ran them against the actual efficiency gains of the factories?
They wanted to see which variable actually caused the explosion in productivity. Which one was the true catalyst?
The result is staggering. The tariff effect absolutely flatlined.
It turns into a depressing, flat, gray line on the chart. It carries almost 0 statistical significance.
And the service reform effect.
A massive, undeniable, towering red spike.
Wow.
It completely dominates the entire regression model. It swallows the tariff data whole.
This completely upends how we should think about development. Stop obsessing over the factory walls.
Stop staring at the bricks.
The secret to wealth creation fundamentally shifted decades ago. It is no longer about the manufacturing process itself.
No, it is entirely about the efficiency of the inputs feeding that process.
The efficiency of the inputs. We need to break that concept down for a second.
We really need to rebuild the blood vessels of this economy so you can truly understand the anatomy of a factory.
Let's do the anatomy lesson. It clarifies everything.
Okay. If a modern manufacturing plant is a living, breathing organism, finance is the blood.
The blood.
It is the liquid capital that keeps the internal organs oxygenated. Without blood flow, the organs just shut down.
That makes telecom the nervous system.
Precisely. Telecom is the raw, instantaneous information. It is the electrical signals jumping from the brain to the limbs.
Telling the hand to move, telling the eye to look.
Right. Then transport is the muscle.
It is the physical logistics, the brute force required to move heavy mass through three-dimensional space.
Muscle dragging the entire organism forward.
Which leaves insurance. What is insurance?
Insurance is the immune system. It locks in credit. It protects the organism from sudden, catastrophic external shocks.
It fights off the viruses of uncertainty.
Exactly. And that analogy reveals a brutal, terrifying reality.
Because if you understand human anatomy, you know what happens if any single one of those 4 pipelines gets a blockage.
The organism dies instantly. It does not matter how healthy the rest of the body is.
If a state bureaucracy creates a monopoly and clogs the telecom nervous system, the factory downstream necrotizes.
It rots from the inside out.
You could literally have the smartest, most dedicated, hardest working assembly line workers on the entire planet. But without a nervous system, they are paralyzed.
They're just standing around in the dark, waiting for instructions that will never arrive.
This brings us to a really crucial juncture. A skeptical listener might be asking, look, this is a great metaphor, but how do we know this is actually real?
Right. Is this just some ivory tower academic theory? A neat little story cooked up in a faculty lounge.
Not even close. We are standing in front of a great wall of data. The researchers did not guess.
No, they tracked individual, specific factories.
How many?
4,000.
4,000 distinct manufacturing plants.
And they didn't just take a quick snapshot. They tracked the life and death of these 4,000 factories across 13 brutal, volatile years of economic transition.
The sheer volume of paperwork required to build that data set is mind-numbing. Let me translate the scale of this for you.
This data set covers over 60% of India's entire manufacturing output during this era.
It is a panopticon. There is nowhere for a failing factory to hide in this data.
And the researchers were absolutely paranoid about fake results. They didn't just casually glance at the top-line numbers.
They deployed a mathematical quarantine.
This is critical. In economics, you always have a chicken and egg problem.
Did the factory get more efficient because of the policy, or did the government pass the policy because the factories were already getting efficient?
Endogenous bias, the great enemy of truth.
To defeat it, they used incredibly advanced mathematical filters. They essentially stripped out every single ounce of human bias.
They isolated weird local fluctuations. They erased every piece of random noise in the system.
In the face of an ironclad mountain of data this dense, this purified, any political intuition or gut feeling you have about how economies work is instantly pulverized.
You literally cannot argue with a sample size this massive that isolates causality this cleanly.
So let's look at the first massive crack in the monopoly wall. Let's look at Breakthrough 1, the 1994 bank heist.
I love that title. Because before 1994, the state-run banking system was essentially robbing the future potential of the entire Indian economy.
The absurdity of the pre-1994 credit market is staggering. Imagine a banking sector that functions completely blindfolded.
The data shows that before the reform, a shocking 64% of all commercial bank loans were just mindlessly, mechanically renewed.
64%. They were just hitting copy and paste on the loan documents, year after year.
To the exact same old companies.
It fundamentally did not matter if your company was a bloated, dying dinosaur.
It didn't matter if you were losing money every quarter and making awful products that nobody wanted to buy.
As long as you had the political connections, your loan was renewed.
And on the flip side, it didn't matter if you were a brilliant startup. You could have a revolutionary new product, a genius management team, and infinite global demand.
If you weren't in the club, you starved to death.
Merit was entirely irrelevant. The state owned the banks, and the state just kept feeding the same lazy zombie incumbents.
But 1994 changes the trajectory of the entire nation. 1994 breaks the state credit monopoly.
The government finally allows private banks and foreign money to rush into the financial sector.
They introduce ruthless competition to the business of lending.
Okay, I have to step in and push back here.
Go for it.
I hear the phrase banking reform, and my eyes immediately glaze over. It sounds so disconnected from reality.
How does a guy in a suit, sitting in an air-conditioned skyscraper, changing a lending algorithm, make a mechanic sweating on a factory assembly line work faster?
Where is the physical connection?
That is the ultimate plot twist. That is the magic hidden in this data.
Walk me through the mechanism. How does a bank reform change a factory floor?
The numbers are undeniable. Because of this specific banking reform, the actual efficiency of the factories down on the floor miraculously jumped by 6.6%.
Wait, a 6.6% efficiency spike? Just
Yeah.
from changing the banks?
Yes, without touching a single wrench on the assembly line, without buying a single new robotic arm.
Without pouring a single ounce of new concrete.
Explain how that is physically possible.
When you break a banking monopoly, you change the directional flow of the economic blood.
The money finally aggressively stops flowing to the well-connected, lazy, crony companies.
The zombies are cut off from life support.
The guys who are surviving on the 64% rubber stamp, they suddenly get a no from the loan officer.
Exactly. That lazy trap capital is suddenly liberated.
And because the new private banks are desperate for actual returns, that money violently rushes into the hands of the brilliant, hungry, hyper-efficient factories.
Factories that had been starved for cash for decades.
Survival of the fittest was finally turned back on. The evolutionary engine started running again.
You did not miraculously teach the lazy factory manager how to be faster. You just took his capital and gave it to the visionary factory manager who already knew how to dominate the market.
Efficiency rises out of thin air because the dead weight is finally allowed to die.
That is a phenomenal insight. Capital allocation fundamentally is efficiency. You let the weak die and you fuel the strong.
But look, having $1 billion in your new private bank account means absolutely nothing if you cannot physically call your suppliers to spend it.
Which brings us to the nervous system. Breakthrough 2. Unbanning the future.
The year is 2002. Telecom.
This was the shattering of the most restrictive monopoly of all. The nervous system monopoly.
In 2002, the absolute state stranglehold on long-distance phone calls was completely obliterated.
Government finally stepped back and said, okay, we're opening the doors. Foreign ownership in telecommunications is allowed.
You have to understand the sheer apocalyptic hysteria this policy caused at the time. The political backlash was deafening.
The conflict was intense. Conservatives, entrenched politicians, and the telecom incumbents screamed from the rooftops.
They went on television and declared that allowing foreign money into the national telecom grid would destroy the country.
They called it a surrender of national sovereignty. They said foreign powers would control India's voice.
They predicted the collapse of domestic industry. But what did that terrifying freedom actually bring?
It brought an efficiency leap that defies all pessimistic predictions.
Let's look at the hard, undeniable numbers. Remember that mind-numbing 8-year wait just to get a landline installed?
The hallmark of the 1980s.
By the time this telecom reform fully took hold, the wait time for a telephone connection violently nosedived.
It went from an average of 30 agonizing days in the immediate pre-reform era down to exactly 4 days.
The wait time was essentially eradicated. It went from a structural barrier to a minor scheduling issue.
And the quality of the network. Remember the 19 catastrophic faults a month?
Faults dropped by 2/3 across the board.
The nervous system suddenly started firing clearly. The static was gone.
So what was the actual impact on the factories downstream? The guys actually trying to manufacture physical goods.
They saw an 8.4% explosion in pure productivity, just from the telecom reform alone.
This is the birth of just-in-time management in the Indian subcontinent.
Think about the physical reality of inventory. You absolutely cannot order parts just in time if you are terrified that you might have to wait 30 days for the phone company to fix your line.
It is impossible. If you cannot communicate instantly, you must compensate with mass.
You are forced to hold massive, incredibly expensive physical inventories in giant warehouses just in case something goes wrong.
That is millions of dollars in capital just sitting in a dark room, gathering dust.
Telecom reform did not just give these factory managers shiny new plastic phones on their desks. It gave them the fundamental conceptual weapon of speed.
Information velocity is the ultimate weapon in global manufacturing, and for the first time in history, Indian factories had it.
So we fixed the blood, and we fix the nerves.
But knowing what to build and having the money to build it means nothing if you can't physically move the product.
Which brings us to the muscle. Breakthrough 3, unclogging the physical arteries. The year is 1997. Transport.
If telecom is the invisible nervous system, transport is the brute physical force of the economy. And pre-1997, that brute force was rotting in the sun.
The ports were an absolute, unmitigated disaster. Ships literally sat anchored in the harbor for weeks, doing absolutely nothing but burning fuel and paying crew wages.
Moving a shipping container in and out of the country was a slow, agonizing, astronomically expensive joke.
The infrastructure was crumbling, and the bureaucracy managing it was even worse.
So in 1997, the shockwave hits. India radically alters the rules. They allow up to 74% foreign equity ownership in the physical management of their ports and transport infrastructure.
And right on cue, the exact same critics scream the exact same lines. You are selling out our sovereign borders. You are literally handing the physical docks of our nation to foreigners.
The political optics of breaking a national infrastructure monopoly are always terrible. It always looks like a surrender.
But we cannot look at the politics. We have to look at the data shock on the docks.
The data shock is the perfect term for it, because the physical miracle is entirely measurable.
The turnaround time for a massive cargo container in the Mumbai port crashed.
It went from 11 days of just sitting around on the tarmac down to just 4.5 days.
The delay was more than cut in half overnight.
And the national average plummeted from 8 days down to 3.5 days.
The physical bottleneck was simply vaporized by foreign management efficiency.
And the ultimate downstream spike for the factories.
This is the biggest number we have seen yet. This physical unclogging of the ports caused an astronomical 18.8% spike in factory productivity.
18.8%. It is almost unheard of in economic literature.
I have to ask why. Why is the transport spike so much higher than the banking spike or the telecom spike? What makes the muscle so vital?
Because physical inventory is trapped capital in its purest form.
When your finished product isn't rotting on a dock in the blazing sun for 2 weeks waiting for a crane operator, your cash flow is freed up instantly.
You are not paying exorbitant storage fees. You are not paying penalty fees for missing global delivery deadlines.
You are finally moving at the exact punishing speed of global demand.
You are no longer fighting the physical friction of your own geography. The physical artery is clear and the product flows.
Okay, we have systematically reconstructed the blood, the nerves, and the muscle. Let's look at the final, most misunderstood system, the immune system.
Breakthrough 4. The 2002 insurance icebreaker.
Insurance. I know what everyone is thinking. Everyone thinks insurance is just boring.
It sounds like the most tedious, soul-crushing spreadsheet in the corporate world.
That is a dangerous misconception. Insurance is not a spreadsheet. Insurance is the ultimate shield.
Up until 2002, this vital economic shield was a sluggish, unresponsive, entirely state-owned monopoly.
But the icebreaker hits. The government shatters the monopoly. Private and foreign insurers are finally legally allowed into the arena to compete for premium.
And instantly, the total premiums to GDP ratio jumps significantly. People and businesses start aggressively buying the shield.
The impact here is not just financial. It is deeply, profoundly psychological for a factory owner.
Put yourself in their mindset. For decades, you lived in absolute terror.
You knew that one single electrical fire in your warehouse or one single lost cargo ship in a storm would not just ruin your quarter, it would literally bankrupt your grandchildren.
That level of existential terror paralyzes decision-making.
But when that terror is removed, when the shield is raised, what do?
They take wild, calculated, ambitious risks.
Yes, they innovate. They push the boundaries.
They buy that experimental, hyper-fast German milling machine, knowing that if it breaks, they are covered. They expand into new, volatile markets.
Because for the first time in their lives, they know the floor will not collapse completely beneath their feet.
The immune system allows the organism to venture into dangerous, high-reward environments.
But there's a very dark twist to this insurance story. A twist about who actually benefited the most from this new shield.
And this brings us to the ultimate contrast of the entire deep dive. This is the counterintuitive reveal that completely threw me for a loop when I read the study.
We call it the foreign multiplier.
Think about the premise of these reforms. The government fixed the phone lines for everyone in the country, right?
They unplugged the physical ports for everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats.
Right. A working port is a working port. A dial tone is a dial tone. It shouldn't matter who picks up the phone.
But the data shows something deeply uncomfortable for domestic politicians. Foreign-owned manufacturing subsidiaries operating inside India got a massive, entirely disproportionate windfall from these exact same universal reforms.
The statistical gap is glaring. It is impossible to ignore.
Local Indian-owned factories saw a telecom boost of 7.2%, which is incredible, right? We just celebrated that.
But the foreign-owned factories operating in the exact same cities, they got a 9.8% boost from the exact same phone lines.
And the insurance gap is even starker. Local factory insurance boost. Flat, statistically insignificant.
Foreign factory insurance boost, a highly significant 3.3%.
Here is where it gets really interesting. I have to ask the completely obvious question.
If the new economic roads are paved equally for absolutely everyone, why is the foreign guy driving down that road twice as fast?
Why did the local businesses get left in the dust on the exact same government policies?
It makes absolutely no sense on the surface. A phone is a phone.
To understand this terrifying gap, we have to look past the physical infrastructure. We have to look at the deep mechanism.
We have to talk about global resonance.
Global resonance. I love that term. Explain how it works on the factory floor.
Think about a foreign corporate subsidiary operating in India in the late 1990s. They were a remote outpost.
But they were already organically plugged into a hyper-advanced, massively complex global supply chain back in their home country.
Right. They had a glittering corporate headquarters in London or Tokyo or New York.
Exactly. That headquarters already had the flawless blueprints for maximum global efficiency. They had the advanced proprietary software.
They had the management structures. They knew exactly, down to the second, how to run a world-class manufacturing operation.
But they couldn't execute it in India.
Because the local Indian state monopolies were not just blocking local phone calls, they were actively blocking the resonance of that advanced global network from ever reaching the local factory floor.
The outpost was severed from the brain.
Oh, wow. The noose wasn't just choking supply, it was choking knowledge.
So the second the telecom and port blockages were legally vaporized by the reforms, what did those foreign firms do?
They didn't have to invent anything. They just flipped a switch.
Instantly. They literally downloaded world-class efficiency protocols from their headquarters the very next morning.
They already possessed the high-performance sports car. They were just waiting for the government to open the highway. They already knew exactly how to use the fast lane.
And the locals?
The locals had never even seen the fast lane. Once the new phones finally worked, the local manager picked it up and realized he didn't know who to call.
Or what to say to maximize efficiency. They had to build that global network entirely from scratch through trial and error.
That is an absolutely devastating reality. The barrier keeping India poor wasn't just physical infrastructure, it was institutional knowledge.
The foreigners had it coiled up tight like a spring, just waiting to be released. The locals had to invent the spring.
It perfectly explains the massive disparity in the data.
Okay, I want to execute a hard pivot right here. I am putting my skeptic's hat back on.
I want to play devil's advocate and try to tear this entire study apart. We have to do the causality interrogation.
Welcome to the skeptic's corner. Bring it on.
Because whenever I see an economic study that confidently declares event A caused event B, my brain instantly fires back, what if event B actually caused event A?
The classic trap of reverse causality. It ruins careers.
Exactly. Let's challenge this whole premise of the invisible noose. What if these Indian factories just naturally got super rich, highly profitable, and hyper-efficient on their own?
Maybe they just figured things out.
Huh?
And then, because they were suddenly so rich and politically powerful, they formed lobbying groups and forced the Indian government to give them better phones and private banks.
It is a totally valid hypothesis. Did the wealthy, powerful factories demand the reform?
Did we get the cause and effect entirely backward? Are the researchers confusing the symptom for the disease?
Prove to me we didn't get it backward. Prove the causality.
This is where the economists behind this paper pull out the absolute ultimate statistical weapon.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece of hardcore self-proof.
How do you mathematically prove the chicken didn't come before the egg?
You don't look at the chicken or the egg. You look for an external earthquake. You look entirely outside the borders of India.
Okay. You have my attention.
To prove that India's reforms were not secretly caused by Indian factories, the researchers looked at China, and they looked at Indonesia.
Specifically, they looked at the massive, binding legal promises those two countries were making to the World Trade Organization at the exact same time.
The WTO. the global trading club.
Yes. In the late 90s and early 2000s, China was aggressively, relentlessly negotiating to join the WTO.
And to buy their ticket in, China was promising the world that they would rip open their own internal service sectors to foreign competition.
They were opening their doors to the globe.
Now, I want you to imagine you are a senior economic policymaker sitting in an office in New Delhi.
You are looking across the border at China, your biggest, most terrifying geopolitical and economic rival.
And you see them actively throwing open their doors to global efficiency. You see them preparing to dominate the 21st century.
Panic. Pure, unadulterated geopolitical terror.
Exactly. India reformed its upstream service sectors because it was utterly terrified of being left behind and crushed by China on the global stage.
It was pure survival instinct.
It was not, because local Indian factories politely asked for better phone lines. The domestic factories had nothing to do with it.
The policy reform was a massive, sudden external shock driven entirely by global geopolitics.
By using China's WTO entry as the trigger, the causality is mathematically purified.
It is airtight. The geopolitical panic and the resulting reform came first. The factory efficiency came second. The ghost is real.
That is brilliant, using international geopolitical panic as a natural experiment to prove local economic causality.
But wait, I have one final nagging objection. We have to rule out fake trends before we crown this study a masterpiece.
Let's do it. What is the final flaw?
Maybe the specific manufacturing industries that happen to use a lot of high-tech communications and complex finance were just naturally booming globally anyway.
Like the late 90s and 2000s were an explosive tech boom everywhere on Earth.
What if the Indian government's policy actually accomplished nothing, and Indian tech-heavy factories just caught a lucky, totally unrelated global wave?
It is the ultimate fear of any researcher. Did we just measure a global coincidence?
Yeah.
But again, the math handles it ruthlessly. The researchers locked their entire data set into a model that brutally controls for these fake industry-specific time trends.
A mathematical quarantine.
Yes. They essentially fed the algorithm a strict command. Find the global tech boom. Find the natural organic growth of any specific industry over these 13 years. Now mathematically subtract all of that global noise.
Show us only what happened purely and exclusively because of the local Indian policy change.
They isolated the pure signal.
And the result?
The Service Reform Index still screams off the charts. The coefficients remain wildly significant.
The global noise is entirely eliminated. The truth remains standing.
It wasn't a lucky global wave. It was the deliberate, targeted removal of the local red news.
Without a shadow of doubt, the science is settled. So let us step back from the microscope. Let's look at the macrotransmission. The absolute biggest picture possible.
Because we have been spending this entire time talking about abstract concepts. Efficiency ratios, productivity indexes, statistical significance.
We have been staring at spreadsheets.
Right, and at the end of the day, a spreadsheet does not feed a family. An index coefficient does not employ a mechanic.
Did anyone actually build anything physical in the real world because of these invisible service reforms?
The reality is an overwhelming, spectacular yes. The overall massive physical output of Indian manufacturing, the actual tonnage of goods leaving the factories, expanded profoundly, purely because of these service reforms.
They actually made more stuff. The efficiency translated to mass.
When you fundamentally drop the frictional cost of doing business, the business inevitably expands.
Think about the underlying psychology of a business owner. When your underlying costs permanently drop, when the invisible, crushing daily tax of terrible phone lines, extortionate bank loans, and rotting physical ports finally vanishes, you do not just sit there and quietly pocket the difference.
Small minds might, but the market doesn't.
You take that newfound capital and you build the second factory. You hire the next 1,000 people. You launch the new product line.
True cost reduction isn't just about saving pennies on a ledger. Cost reduction provides the psychological courage to expand your empire.
It is the absolute foundation of scale. You cannot build a skyscraper on a swamp. You cannot scale a national manufacturing base on a broken service foundation.
So we have dismantled the myth. We have found the hidden engine. What does this all mean for us? For the listener driving to work or sitting at their desk, what is the core truth here?
There is a massive, highly uncomfortable lesson buried in this data. It challenges the political rhetoric of almost every major nation today.
A nation's true manufacturing power, a country's actual, tangible, physical wealth, does not depend on what it aggressively guards and protects inside its own walls.
No. It depends entirely, fundamentally, and irreversibly on what that nation connects to on the outside.
The ultimate strength of the factory is completely dictated by the strength of the network it plugs into.
If you sever the network, the factory dies. It will slowly suffocate. And it does not matter how high the tariff walls are built to protect it.
Which brings me to a final urgent provocation for everyone listening to this right now. I want you to literally look out your window today. Look at the headlines on your phone. Look at the global evening news.
The trend is alarming. It is a massive regression.
Global protectionism is roaring back with a vengeance. Trade walls are going up everywhere, on every continent.
Politicians on every single side of the political spectrum are actively, proudly celebrating the locking of our own doors. We are cheering for economic isolation as if it is a virtue.
We are proudly telling ourselves that we can build absolutely everything we need inside our own walls. We don't need the outside network.
So I want you to ask yourself a terrifying question. As the entire world aggressively retreats from open networks, as we deliberately cut the international lines of transport and finance and communication in the glorious name of national sovereignty, are we quietly, blindly rebuilding the invisible nooses of the past?
Are we proudly, arrogantly repeating the exact same suffocating economic mistake that paralyzed an entire subcontinent for decades?
And when that new noose finally pulls tight around our own necks, who
Uh,
exactly is going to be left to cut the rope this time?